I never thought I would find myself in a situation where I had to question my entire life, but here I am. My name is Mike, and I've been married to Sarah for 5 years. On the surface, we seemed like a perfect couple. We had both built solid careers, Sarah as a marketing manager, and I as a software developer. We had a cozy little house in the suburbs of Chicago, a couple of dogs, and a decent social life. Friends would often tell us how they admired our seemingly unbreakable bond. But lately, things had been different. I noticed Sarah had been more distant. She spent late nights at the office under the guise of working on a big project. At first, I brushed it off. It's not uncommon for people to put in extra hours, especially in her line of work. But as time went on, I started picking up on subtle changes. She stopped being affectionate, and our conversations felt forced, almost rehearsed. It all came to a head one Saturday afternoon when I was cleaning out the basement and stumbled across a receipt. It was for a hotel, not just any hotel, but a fancy one. On the outskirts of town, a place known for its romantic getaways. My heart sank when I realized the date on the receipt was just a week prior. I confronted my gut feelings with a barrage of questions. Why would she book a hotel? Who was she with? I had a sinking feeling that this was more than just a late-night project. That evening, I decided to dig deeper. I went onto her laptop, hoping to find something, anything, that would prove my suspicions right or wrong. What I found was shocking. There were messages exchanged between Sarah and someone named Jake, who I later learned was an entertainer on a cruise ship. They were flirty, full of innuendos, and the last message I read made my stomach churn. "Can't wait to see you again next month. I'll make sure to sneak away from the others." My heart raced as the realization hit me like a freight train. She was cheating on me. When Sarah got home that night, I was a mess of emotions: rage, disbelief, and betrayal. I waited for her to settle in, feigning normalcy, but the tension in the air was palpable. I could hardly contain myself. As soon as she stepped into the living room, I threw the laptop on the coffee table. "We need to talk," I said, my voice trembling. She looked at me, confusion etched on her face. "What's going on?" I pointed to the laptop, my heart pounding. "Who is Jake, and why did you go to a hotel with him?" Her reaction was swift and defensive. "Mike, it's not what you think. Jake is just a friend from work. We were planning a team retreat, and I didn't want to bother you with the details." The flimsiness of her excuse made me sick. "Just a friend," I shot back. "Then why are you sending him messages that make it sound like you two are more than friends?" She hesitated, and in that moment I could see the panic in her eyes. "Okay, fine, we flirted a little, but it didn't mean anything. I love you, Mike. It's just harmless fun." Her words felt like daggers, each one twisting deeper into my heart. The betrayal stung worse than I could have ever imagined. I wanted to scream at her, to throw my hands in the air, and demand answers for the lies she had fed me over the years. Instead, I felt an icy calm wash over me. It was surreal, like watching a movie with no sound. As I stood there, I couldn't help but think about the woman I had married. Was she really the same person I fell in love with? Or had I merely created a fantasy of who she was? The emotional impact of discovering her infidelity crashed over me in waves. I felt angry, hurt, and utterly lost. I didn't know how to process the chaos that had erupted in my life. The thought of losing everything we had built together was terrifying. But as those feelings settled, a different emotion began to rise: resolve. I wouldn't let this betrayal go unanswered. I needed to think about how I would move forward. My mind raced with possibilities, and it dawned on me that Jake, the cruise ship entertainer, was part of this mess. If Sarah thought she could get away with this, I was determined to make sure that she and Jake faced the consequences of their actions. I didn't know exactly how I would do it yet, but one thing was for certain: I was ready to retaliate. Word count 411. After the confrontation with Sarah, I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions. I didn't sleep that night, tossing and turning, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and revenge. I had a feeling that beneath Sarah's facade of innocence lay a web of lies, and I was ready to untangle it all. The next morning, I decided to take action. First, I needed to gather more evidence. The messages on her laptop were just the tip of the iceberg. I started to monitor her behavior more closely. I made mental notes of her schedule, her late-night work sessions, and her increasing phone usage. I even asked her if she wanted to go out for dinner that week, trying to gauge her reaction. She readily agreed, but I could see the anxiety in her eyes. To my surprise, she didn't seem to suspect that I was on to her. I took that as a good sign. It allowed me to formulate my plan without raising any alarms. I knew I had to confront Jake, the guy who had captured her attention and, evidently, her heart. Given that he worked on a cruise ship, I figured there was a chance he wouldn't be around for long, and I couldn't let him slip away. I spent the next few days doing a deep dive into who Jake was. I searched for him online and found his social media profiles. There he was, a tall, muscular guy with a charming smile. His posts featured images of him performing on stage, enjoying the sun on deck, and most importantly, interacting with various women. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy as I scrolled through his pictures, but that feeling quickly morphed into anger and determination. That Friday, I plucked up the courage to send Jake a message on Instagram. I kept it simple but direct. "Hey Jake, we need to talk." I knew I was stepping onto dangerous territory, but my heart raced with anticipation. I needed him to know that I was aware of his involvement with Sarah. Within a few hours, I got a response. "What's up?" came his casual reply. I couldn't help but smirk at his nonchalant attitude. This guy had no idea what was coming. I took a deep breath and typed out my next message. "It's about Sarah. I think you know who she is." I hit send, feeling a mixture of exhilaration and fear. Would he deny it? Would he try to brush me off? I was prepared for anything. To my surprise, he responded quickly. "Yeah, I know her. We've been talking a bit. Everything okay?" I felt a surge of satisfaction knowing I was getting under his skin. "Everything is not okay, Jake. You're messing with my marriage. I think you should know that Sarah isn't being honest with you." There was a pause on the other end, and I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. Finally, he replied, "What do you mean?" I laid it all out for him, how I had discovered the messages and how she had lied about her late-night activities. I painted a picture of a deceitful woman who was playing both sides. I wanted him to feel the weight of what he was doing. His response was swift, but it wasn't what I expected. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married. I thought she was just some girl I met on the ship." I felt a mix of vindication and anger. On one hand, I was glad he didn't know the full extent of Sarah's betrayal. On the other hand, it made me realize just how deep this betrayal ran. She had been playing him just as much as she had been playing me. I pressed him further. "You need to tell her that it's over. She's lied to you and she's lying to me. You're just a part of her game." His silence was deafening. I could tell he was contemplating his next move. Finally, he responded, "All right. If you say she's married, I'll cut it off, but I'm going to need proof." I couldn't believe how easily this was unfolding. I told him I'd send him the messages I had found, wrapping up my argument with a final, menacing statement. "You need to understand, Jake, that I won't let her play you or me anymore." After our exchange, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I was taking control of a situation that had left me feeling powerless for too long. I spent the rest of the weekend gathering all the evidence I could find, screenshots of their messages, the hotel receipt, even pictures of Sarah and me during happier times that I'd send to Jake as a reminder of what he was helping to tear apart. As I prepared to send him the proof, I realized that this plan was about more than just revenge on Jake for being the other man. It was about reasserting my power in my own life. I wanted Sarah to know that she had messed with the wrong person. I would not only confront her about her lies, but also expose the truth to Jake, who clearly had no idea what he was getting into. I knew I was on a path that could lead to total chaos, but at that moment, chaos felt like my only option. I was ready to unveil the truth and watch as the pieces fell into place. Word count 452. With my resolve steeled, I gathered everything I needed to send to Jake. I compiled the messages between him and Sarah, the hotel receipt, and a few additional screenshots of her vague comments about her friends, who were just a little too friendly. I could feel my heart pounding as I pressed send, knowing that this was the moment everything could change. Within minutes, Jake responded with a string of messages that showed he was in shock. "I had no idea," he wrote. "I can't believe she was lying to me like that. I felt a smirk creep across my face. This was going just as I had hoped. You need to confront her immediately, I replied, wanting him to take action. The next few hours felt like an eternity. I imagined the chaos that was about to unfold. Would Sarah try to deny everything? Would she twist the story to make herself look like the victim? I knew her well enough to anticipate her tactics, and I braced myself for the inevitable confrontation that lay ahead. Later that evening, Sarah came home from work, looking as though nothing had changed. She greeted me with a peck on the cheek and headed straight to the kitchen, seemingly oblivious to the storm brewing in my mind. I watched her move around, preparing dinner, and I felt an inner conflict. Part of me wanted to let this play out, to see how long she could keep up the charade. But the other part of me was itching to confront her and lay everything out on the table. "Hey, can we talk?" I finally said, trying to keep my voice steady. She turned to me, a hint of concern flickering in her eyes. "Sure, what's up?" I took a deep breath, the words I had rehearsed in my mind tumbling out. "I know about Jake." Her face paled, and for a moment I thought I caught a glimpse of the truth in her eyes, but then the mask slipped back on. "Jake, what do you mean?" I didn't have to explain further. I pulled out my phone and showed her the messages that I had saved. As she read, I watched her expression shift from confusion to anger. "This is ridiculous. You're taking things out of context. We were just being friendly." I felt my blood boil. "Friendly, is that what you call it?" She scoffed. "You're overreacting, Mike. You know how my job is. It's all just part of the show." "Part of the show? You're telling me that flirting with a guy on a cruise ship is part of your job?" "This isn't about your career anymore, Sarah. It's about you lying to me, lying to both of us." She tried to deflect, her voice rising. "I didn't ask for this. You're making it seem like I wanted this to happen." "You did want it," I shot back. "You didn't just flirt, you took it to another level. You booked a hotel to be with him. Do you think I'm that naive?" Her eyes narrowed as she searched for a way out of this corner. "You don't understand how lonely I've felt. You're always glued to your computer, and I just wanted someone to pay attention to me." My heart sank at her words. It was as if she was trying to turn this all back on me. "You think cheating is the solution to feeling lonely. Instead of coming to me, you decided to betray our marriage." She huffed, crossing her arms defiantly. "You just don't get it. You've been distant too." It was infuriating to hear her deflect the blame. "That's not the point, Sarah. You could have talked to me about how you felt, but instead you chose to sneak around behind my back." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. I could see her wall slowly crumbling as the gravity of the situation hit her, yet she still searched for ways to justify her actions. "You're blowing this out of proportion. I was just having fun. I thought we were in a rut." "In a rut?" I repeated incredulously. "You thought betrayal was the answer. I can't believe you would stoop to this level." We were at a stalemate, both of us exhausted and emotionally charged. I could see the tears forming in her eyes, but I had no sympathy left for her. She had crossed a line, and now it was time to set the stakes. "Here, what's going to happen?" I said, my voice firm. "You're going to tell Jake it's over. I'm going to send him everything you've said and done. He deserves to know the truth." "Mike, please don't do this. You don't need to involve him." Her voice wavered, and I could see the panic in her eyes. "But I do need to involve him," I replied coldly. "He's a part of this mess, and I won't let you to get away with it. You need to feel the consequences of your actions." As I spoke, I felt a sense of empowerment. I was reclaiming control of my life. I would no longer be the victim in this situation. I would ensure both Sarah and Jake faced the repercussions of their choices. "Let's see how you handle this, Sarah," I added, my voice low and steady, "because it's time for the truth to come out." Word count 458. The days that followed our heated confrontation felt surreal. The initial shock of Sarah's betrayal had worn off, and in its place was a cold determination. I was resolute in my decision to expose her and Jake for what they were, players in a cruel game that involved my heart and trust. I spent the next few days gathering every shred of evidence I could find: detailed screenshots of their conversations, the hotel receipt, and the very statement Sarah had made that painted her as the innocent victim. I felt a sense of purpose as I organized everything, preparing to deliver a final blow that would rattle both of their worlds. Meanwhile, Sarah was a whirlwind of emotions. She tried to reach out to me, offering half-hearted apologies that felt insincere. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen, Mike," she said one evening, her voice strained. "I was just trying to feel alive." "Feel alive?" I echoed incredulously. "By throwing away our marriage, by lying to me?" She could only stare back at me, tears brimming in her eyes. It was clear that her facade was crumbling, but the anger I felt prevented any sympathy from surfacing. I didn't respond to her pleas, instead choosing to focus on my plan. That weekend, I finally reached out to Jake again. "We need to talk about Sarah," I messaged him, my hands shaking with adrenaline. I knew this was the moment of truth. His response came almost instantly. "Can we do this over the phone? I'm off the ship now." I agreed, and we scheduled a call for the following evening. As I paced around my living room, I mentally prepared myself for the upcoming conversation. I knew I had to be calm and collected, but inside I was a bundle of nerves. When the time came, I dialed his number. The phone rang, and I felt my heart racing. Finally, he picked up. "Hey, it's Jake." "Hey," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "So I wanted to talk to you about Sarah." "What about her?" he asked, sounding curious but cautious. I took a deep breath. "I've got proof that she's been lying to both of us. I think you deserve to know the truth." There was a slight pause on the other end, and I could sense his hesitation. "What do you mean?" I launched into the details: the hotel stay, the messages, her denial of our marriage. I recounted everything, feeling a twisted sense of satisfaction as I heard his breathing quicken. "You've been played, man. She's been telling you she's single when she's not." He was quiet for a moment, and I could almost hear the gears turning in his mind. Finally, he responded, "I trusted her. I thought we had something real." "Trust me, you didn't," I said firmly. "She's been cheating on me, and now she's dragging you into this mess. You need to confront her before you get in any deeper." His voice was tight with frustration. "I can't believe this is happening. I thought she was different." "Clearly she's not," I snapped back, my anger flaring again. "You need to end things with her, or you're going to be left with nothing but regret." After our conversation, I felt a mix of satisfaction and dread. I had laid bare the truth, but I also worried about the fallout. What would Sarah do when she realized I had contacted Jake? Would she retaliate? The next day, I braced myself for her reaction. I could sense that she had been on edge since our phone call, and when I walked into the kitchen that morning, she immediately sensed my tension. "What did you say to him?" she asked, her voice sharp and accusatory. "Just the truth," I replied coolly, knowing I couldn't back down now. "Did you tell him everything?" Her face paled, and I could see panic setting in. "Everything he needed to know," I said. "He deserves to hear it from me, not you." Her eyes narrowed, and I could tell she was weighing her options. "You're being cruel, Mike. This doesn't have to end in destruction. We can fix this." "Fix what?" I shot back. "Your lies, your betrayal. You think I can just forgive and forget? You put us in this situation. Maybe I made a mistake, but I still love you," she pleaded, her voice rising. "You don't love me, Sarah," I said firmly. "If you did, you wouldn't have cheated. Your love is nothing but a hollow word now." Tears streamed down her cheeks, but I felt nothing. I was done with the emotional manipulation. I had watched her play the victim for far too long. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. I confronted her. "She's denying everything. She said you're lying." I felt a surge of anger. "Of course she is," I replied. "That's what she does when she's caught. Don't let her manipulate you." Jake's response was quick. "I'm done with her. I want nothing to do with this anymore." I knew I had succeeded in severing their ties, but it didn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would. Instead, I felt a deep sense of emptiness. Truth had come out, but at what cost? When I relayed the news to Sarah, she crumpled under the weight of her own lies. "You've ruined everything, Mike," she cried, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean for things to go this far." I stood my ground, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. "You made your choices, Sarah. Now you have to deal with the consequences." In that moment, I realized something important. I had taken back my power. I was no longer the victim in this situation. But what I gained in strength, I lost in trust. Our marriage was in ruins, and even though Jake was out of the picture, I knew the road ahead would be filled with uncertainty and heartache. Word count: 446. The aftermath of exposing Sarah's betrayal was a whirlwind of emotions. The days that followed were tense and tumultuous, filled with heated arguments and painful silences. I had always believed in the sanctity of marriage, but here I was, standing at the edge of a precipice, watching everything I had built with Sarah crumble beneath me. Sarah was a shadow of her former self, once vibrant and full of life. She now wandered through our home like a ghost. The anger I had felt when I first discovered her infidelity had begun to shift into something more complex: sadness, pity, and an overwhelming sense of loss. I had loved her, and now I felt as if I were grieving a person who had never truly existed. Every time we crossed paths in the house, the tension hung thick in the air. I tried to focus on work, burying myself in projects to distract from the emotional turmoil. At the office, my colleagues noticed I was off my game. I was forgetting simple tasks and missing deadlines. I felt like I was drifting, caught in a fog of betrayal and anger. One night, after yet another silent dinner where we barely spoke, I snapped. "What are we doing, Sarah? This isn't living. It feels like we're just going through the motions." She looked up from her plate, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "I don't know, Mike. I'm lost. I made a terrible mistake and I'm not sure how to fix it." I felt a pang of sympathy, but it was quickly overshadowed by the anger I still harbored. "Fix it? How do you fix something that's been broken like this? I can't just pretend everything is fine when you shattered my trust." "I thought I could have both," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought I could find excitement without hurting you. I was wrong." "You were not just wrong, you were selfish," I shot back. "You thought about yourself, about your desires, without considering how it would affect me." "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "Intentions don't matter when the damage is done," I replied, my voice low but firm. "What do you want from me, Sarah? Do you want me to forgive you, to forget this ever happened?" She shook her head, visibly defeated. "I just want us to be happy again. I want to work through this." Deep down, I knew that forgiveness would take time, if it were even possible. The emotional scars from this experience would linger long after the dust settled. I had given her everything, my trust, my love, only to have it returned in the form of betrayal. "I don't know if I can," I admitted finally. "I'm not sure I can look at you the same way again. Every time I do, I see the lies and the deceit." The silence that followed was deafening. It felt like the weight of the world was pressing down on us. I could see that she was genuinely remorseful, but I was also aware that remorse doesn't change the past. In the days that followed, I made the decision to seek help. I scheduled an appointment with a therapist to sort through my feelings. I realized that I needed to understand what led us to this point: the emotional distance that had crept into our relationship, the unaddressed issues that had paved the way for infidelity. While I could not control Sarah's actions or feelings, I could gain control over my own. After my first session, I came home feeling lighter, as if some of the burden had been lifted. But it didn't take long for Sarah to notice the shift in my demeanor. "You seem different," she said one evening, glancing up from her phone. "I am different," I replied. "I'm working on myself, and I think it's time you start thinking about what you want to. If this marriage is going to survive, we both need to be willing to put in the effort." "I will," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with hope. "I'll do whatever it takes, Mike, I promise." Her enthusiasm felt genuine, but I was wary. I had heard promises before, empty words that had led to months of heartbreak. "Let's not rush into anything," I cautioned. "This takes time. We need to rebuild, and that won't happen overnight." As the weeks went by, we began to navigate the rocky terrain of our new reality. We started attending couples therapy together, where we were forced to confront the truth about our relationship. It was grueling work. We unraveled painful memories, dissected our communication failures, and confronted the core issues that had driven us apart. At times, I felt as if we were making progress, but there were also moments when the weight of betrayal would hit me like a tidal wave. I'd find myself questioning everything. Did she really love me? Could I ever fully trust her again? Would this be our new normal, perpetually healing but never quite whole? One evening, during a particularly intense therapy session, I broke down. "I feel like I'm in this limbo, stuck between wanting to forgive and holding on to the anger. It's exhausting," I admitted. Sarah reached for my hand, her eyes filled with tears. "I understand," she said softly. "I wish I could take it all back. I want to be better for you, for us." That night I lay awake, contemplating our journey. I realized that healing would not be a straight line. It would be filled with ups and downs, moments of clarity followed by setbacks. But perhaps there was a chance for us, a chance to rebuild something stronger than what we had before. As painful as the experience had been, I began to understand that I wasn't just fighting for our marriage, I was fighting for myself. I wanted to emerge from this stronger, more resilient, regardless of what the future held for us. Word count 471. As the weeks turned into months, the reality of our situation began to sink in. The emotional roller coaster that Sarah and I had been on was exhausting, but through therapy and open communication, we were slowly starting to rebuild. Each session was a step toward clarity, and while the path was fraught with challenges, I could see glimpses of hope where once there had been only darkness. One of the most significant changes was how we learned to communicate. I've always been a keep it inside kind of guy, thinking that discussing my feelings would somehow make me weak. But through therapy, I realized that vulnerability was a strength, not a weakness. I started to express my fears, my doubts, and even my lingering anger over her betrayal. In turn, Sarah began to open up about her own insecurities and the reasons that led her to stray. She admitted her feelings of loneliness had festered because we had drifted apart, both consumed by our work and daily responsibilities. I thought I could find excitement outside our marriage, but I was wrong. She confessed one evening, tears in her eyes. "I never wanted to lose you, Mike. I didn't know how to reach out." Hearing her say that opened a crack in the wall I had built around my heart. I realized that while her choices were inexcusable, there was a shared responsibility in our relationship's decline. It wasn't easy to swallow, but it was a necessary acknowledgement if we were going to move forward. As we navigated our healing journey, I watched Sarah transform. She was committed to change, taking on new hobbies, engaging more in our relationship, and actively participating in therapy. The once bitchy, distant woman I had confronted was slowly being replaced by someone more grounded and genuine. But old habits die hard. There were moments when I would catch glimpses of her phone screen and feel a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I'd hesitate when she was late coming home from work, my mind racing with old fears. What if she's doing it again? The echoes of her betrayal wrapped around my thoughts like a vice. It was during one of those moments of doubt that we had our breakthrough. I expressed my fears during one therapy session, pouring out my heart. "I want to trust you, but it's hard. I can't shake the memories of what happened." I watched as Sarah's expression shifted to one of understanding. "I can't expect you to just forgive and forget," she said. "I have to earn your trust back each day." Those words resonated with me. Trust wasn't something I could just hand over. It was something that would need to be built brick by brick. And so, we made a pact to communicate openly and honestly, to create a safe space for each other's feelings, regardless of how difficult they might be. As the months passed, I noticed the shadows of our former lives beginning to lift. We started enjoying quiet evenings together, cooking dinner, and reconnecting over shared interests. I found myself laughing again, sharing moments of joy that had felt absent for so long. There were days I felt hopeful, days I felt anxious, but overall, I sensed an underlying strength in our partnership. Eventually, I reached a point of acceptance. I realized that while Sarah's infidelity had shattered my trust, it had also opened doors for growth, both individually and as a couple. We were learning to navigate our flaws and vulnerabilities, and in doing so, we found a deeper connection than we had ever shared. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I turned to her and said, "I don't know what the future holds for us, but I'm willing to try if you are." Her eyes sparkled with understanding. "So am I, Mike. I want to create something new together, something real." In that moment, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. We were still a work in progress, but I could see that we were both dedicated to making our marriage work. As I reflected on everything that had transpired, from betrayal to confrontation, from anger to healing, I realized that life was unpredictable. We were flawed beings navigating a complex world, but in facing the storm together, we could emerge stronger on the other side. This experience had taught me valuable lessons about love, trust, and the importance of open communication. I may have lost my way for a time, but I had also discovered resilience I never knew I possessed. While the scars of betrayal might always remain, they were a reminder of our journey, a journey toward understanding, forgiveness, and ultimately, a deeper love. As I held Sarah's hand that evening, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew we would face them together, emerging not just as survivors, but as partners committed to building a life filled with honesty, respect, and love. Word count 4. 63.